If you're missing any of these four pieces, the cash can't flow. The money can't flow. Like any of these four pieces are critical to your success. And so tonight we're going to talk about the 100K roadmap. This is a space inside of bondtobuild.com. If you are not already a member of bondtobuild.com, I highly suggest you get in there today and get your free membership to do so. Inside of this space, we grow greater together. There's a number of entrepreneurs with a number of different industries and background and skill sets who are all members of this community. And together we combine our efforts, our energy, our time, our knowledge to be able to help each other advance. Tonight is something that is really a underlying thing that, everybody who's an entrepreneur at some point in their life has to come to this point of either trying to get there or failing to get there. What I'm hoping tonight is that I can share enough information with you from my own personal experience. We might have some people here in the room with me who can share some experience from them about like what that road is like, so that you can probably get some tips to avoid some of the pitfalls or be able to approach this journey in a better way. So my first question to you tonight is, what's the number one reason businesses fail? If you're watching on social media, go ahead and put that down in the comments. If you're here in the Zoom room with me, go ahead and put that in the chat and let me know what you think is the number one reason that businesses fail. And then we'll talk about that. Let's see how many correct answers we get. Think about the number one reason businesses fail. Yes, just one, Amani, just one. It's a hard one. I know. Mindset is a good one. Okay. I'm here in marketing. No clear plan. Okay. Any other ideas? How about this one? Did anybody consider cash flow? So let's talk a little bit about what cash flow is. Cash flow is the money that you have. It's the money that's coming into the business, the money that's used to pay your expenses, the money that's the used to pay your payroll, like all of those things that are part of that is your cash flow. There comes times, you hear it sometimes in personal, people live check to check. You also hear about people having more month than they have check and money. All of that stuff talks about cash flow, and it's really having enough cash coming through in a timely manner so that you can pay for the expenses that you need to operate the business and keep yourself going. A lot of businesses end up running into a crunch because they don't have cash flow. Sometimes they don't have cash flow because they don't generate enough revenue. Sometimes they have cash flow issues because the expenses outweigh what they bring in, or maybe their billing cycles with their clients are too long and the money is not flowing through. There's a number of different reasons why people end up having issues, but cash flow is the number one reason why many businesses end up failing. It's a delicate process, and as you're growing and you're going through those initial phases, it becomes a challenge because at the same time you're trying to service clients, you're trying to generate revenue to come through, you're trying to pay expenses, and you have all these things that are piling up. And if you're starting from the point where you didn't start with an initial investment, or you're not partnered with someone who can give you capital to use when you start up, many people end up doing what they call bootstrapping, paying for stuff as money comes in, and that creates a lot of challenges. According to the SBA 2022 report, the average annual revenue for a business is $46,978. That's a small business with no employee. I was a small business with no employee, basically a solo entrepreneur. I know many of you out there watching me are solo entrepreneurs. You're running your business by yourself. Yeah, you might outsource some stuff here and there, but this is what the SBA put in their latest report that the annual revenue is. Now, what I want you to take into consideration about revenue is that this is before you've paid any bills. This is before you pay any salaries. This is before you pay any of the expenses of the things that it costs to run your business. This is before you buy any of the product and the inventory that you need. $46,978 is the average for a solo entrepreneur business. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about what kind of problems that causes. If you could think about the fact that you're only bringing in $46,000 into your business and you haven't paid yourself and you haven't paid anybody else to be able to get product or invest in the technology that you need to build the infrastructure that you need, that creates cash flow issues. Okay, so you can see how that ends up starting. What I want to help you do tonight is leave with this in mind. And I spent many, many years being what they call busy and broke. So if you've been busy and broke before, go ahead and let me know. Give me a 1 in the chat and let me know if you know what I mean when I say busy and broke. Busy and broke look like for me that I see ones. Dr. K got a bunch of ones in there. I'm feeling you, Dr. K. Yes. Busy and broke is no joke. I spent many, many years taking meetings, running around. This was before the pandemic, meeting people in coffee shops, phones, being on phone calls, sending emails, doing all this busy work. And all that time, trying to also maintain the client base, run the business, do all these other things. And at the end of the day, like many of the things that I was spending all this time and energy doing wasn't advancing the business. It wasn't growing the revenue. It wasn't bringing in new clients. And all of that brought me to a point where I really just had to come to a halt, reevaluate everything, and figure out the best way to move forward from there. So what I'm hoping tonight is that you'll be able to use this information that I'm sharing with you to stop being busy and broke. We don't want no more busy and broke entrepreneurs out there. About me, I told you I've been in business for about 20 years. My specialty has been in a number of different areas. And the reason is because I have clients who have been with me most of that journey, who, as I grew, they grew, their needs grew. So I ended up expanding into a lot of different areas, creating marketing plans, helping people with strategy, being a digital marketing tech. Now that we're in this space of making this multimedia content with videos and reels and stories, I've been involved with all these different pivots throughout the industry. What's the next pivot coming up? AI, automation, like all this stuff is coming in, and I've been kind of going through all these different transitions with people. Oftentimes people come to me because alone, they can't figure out how to move forward, and they can't figure out how to manage all these things. And what I've done is create my company, We Merge Media, to be able to be a source for them so that they can come in and get some help and make sure that they don't get left behind. Right now, I think that we're going through a transition, which is going to leave a lot of people behind if they don't get a right system in place, and if they don't either elevate their skills or find somebody who could help be their guide and help them through that. So tonight I'm going to be talking to you about a couple of different things, and I'm purposely talking about this from the perspective of someone being that solo business owner who may not have any employees, and let you know how you can still reach that milestone of 100K. A couple of things that you're going to need as we go through this is that you have to be mindful of the fact that you become a trusted voice within your industry. I want you to think about your career experience, your job experiences. What are the things that people come to you for that you are the expert on? There's a lot of things that people may see in you that you don't see yourself. I experienced that for a very long time. I want you to think about, like, what is that thing that I do so well, that I'm confident in, that, I can answer a question and I can get positioned to talk about this topic, and it's nothing for me. I can do that. Where can you be a topic expert? That's going to be one key ingredient for this 100K roadmap. The other thing that I want you to think about is, once you have that clarity about who you are and how you show up and what you can do for other people, think about, like, how do people find you? This is a very, very important thing that so many entrepreneurs end up missing, not having in place, and not doing, and they wonder why things don't work. But if no one can find you, you can be the best at whatever it is that you do. But if you're not in the places where the people are looking for answers and where they're looking for experts to guide them, then you are not available to be considered. So I want you to think about creating a brand identity that's discoverable. I want you to think about, how can I now take my trusted voice, use my discoverable brand, and put that in front of more people? I'm going to answer these questions for you tonight, but I want you to be thinking about that. Like, how are you connecting to more people? If you're one of those people who are out there right now, have reached that point where you're tired of putting your offers in front of your family and friends and you need some new folks, tonight's going to be an important, valuable thing for you to walk away with. So let's start talking about, what does it take to position yourself to reach that 100K roadmap? There's 4 components that I've identified over my years: infrastructure, compelling content, having a sales funnel, and automation. If you're missing any of these 4 pieces, the cash can't flow, the money can't flow. Like, any of these 4 pieces are critical to your success. And how do you think I know? Personal experience, conversations with clients, like any of these 4 pieces. And when I told you I came to a halt when I was tired of being busy and broke, I had to really sit down and think about like what's broken, what's not working. And this is what, as I looked at the pieces of the puzzle, I was able to identify these four things. And I now coach and consult my clients on these four things. So I'm able to listen to what people are struggling with and identify, okay, I see what's missing, and here's a solution that we need to work through in order to fix this. So if you're wondering what infrastructure is basically what are those places that people can get to your offers? The website, maybe it's a course community that you develop, or landing page. Do you have the payment processing system if somebody wants to buy your offer? Do you have an email marketing system to be able to build up your leads? All this stuff is infrastructure. You need to have these things established. You need to understand how these things work, and they need to be operable in order for you to benefit from them. So infrastructure, those are some things I want you to think in mind. What do I currently have? If you're somebody who's currently only operating off of social media, which you see is not on this list, you do not have infrastructure. Your social media profile is not your infrastructure. That belongs to Mr. Zuckerberg and whoever else owns those platforms, not you. Discoverability. What is discoverability? When you think about discoverability, I want you to think about where are the places that when I show up with my trusted voice, that people can find me and people can hear about what I do and ask questions and make purchases from me. What are those places? Discoverability is all about positioning yourself to be found when people have those problems that they're trying to fix and they're looking for someone to do that. So, if you think about your industry, and if people can go over to a Google search engine or on the YouTube, onto any of these social platforms, and they're looking, and you don't have any of the stuff that they're looking for to be picked up and them to find you and be able to consider you as a source of a solution to their problem, you're totally missing out on that part, okay? Compelling content. Compelling content is one of those things that has really, really become very, very valuable in marketing these days. If you think about, oftentimes people complicate what content is. What makes the content compelling is simply, is the information that I'm sharing and putting out there resonating with the people that I want as clients? So if you have content that's going to speak to the emotional tie to the people that you want as clients, or touching on those pain points that they're trying to work through and those problems that they're trying to solve, you need to have content that is going to speak to the people that you want to attract. And that looks a lot of different ways. Social media posts, videos, reels, blog articles, courses. This Zoom is going to be a piece of compelling content for me. There's so many things that you're probably already doing that you don't consider to be content that is, and we're going to talk about the role for that stuff and how to use it. And then I also talked about having a sales funnel, and I want you to think about a sales funnel as the gateway to your offers. So if I see your compelling piece of content on Instagram and I hear that reel and you said something that really spoke to me, how do I go buy that thing that I need or that I heard about? Oftentimes our links in our bios are broken. And I know that Instagram is not one of those platforms that lets you put the link in the chat. Facebook lets you put some link in your description, but you have to be mindful about, am I making it easy for people to get to that thing that I want them to buy, that offer that I want them to buy, okay? And then last but not least is automation. We talked about being a solo entrepreneur who is someone who does not have employees. And when you don't have employees, you have a lot of stuff that fall into your plate. Nowadays, there's so many things out there, processes that are in place that you can automate to kind of lift some of that responsibility of those things. But you want to think about automation as the things that can occur without you. Okay. So I know I'm giving you a lot, but these things are all important. I wouldn't put them in here if they weren't important for us to talk about. So I told you this was going to be the 100K roadmap. But what if I told you this was the $1 million roadmap? Think about how you just felt. I want you to think about how you just felt, because I talked about generating 100K, and that was probably like, okay, I can do that. That sounds feasible for me. But what do you feel when I talk about reaching $1 million? Does that feel just as easy for you to be able to do? I know some of you got probably a little uncomfortable, right? Because all this stuff is about mindset. I'm just looking in the chat here. Monty said that's a big, scary number. Yeah. Yeah. So how many people out there watching this on the social right now heard that $1 million number? And how many of you already have the mindset to believe that you have the capacity to be able to make $1 million in your business in revenue? So while you're thinking about that, I want to tell you a little story. So I came across this business model about, actually, be well, always be there, Carmen. I remember coming out of depression in 2015, and Carmen invited me to come to Arizona and do a Be Well retreat back then. I think it's 2015 or 2016. And I was just coming out of it. And my process of coming out of that, I ended up kind of putting this thing together called the Cold Slap because I was evaluating kind of like why I was where I was. And I came across this at the time. I think the guy's name was Brendan Bouchard, I believe his name was. And he had this model that I went to one of the webinars and I watched it. And it was about how you can make $1 million. Now, when I came across that in the mindset that I had at that time, like these numbers were scary, like Amani said. There were things that I had no ability to be able to do at that time that I didn't believe that I could do because the numbers are big. Like, where am I going to find 212 people to pay me $99 a month for a year? Where am I going to find 90 people to spend $299 a month for a year with me? So that number was very scary for me at that time. And I purposely wanted to have this conversation because what I've learned from that experience and, reflecting to prepare for this workshop tonight helped me realize that every every level that I set my mind to, I was able to achieve. So when I set my mind to making enough money to pay the bills, guess what I did? I made just enough money to pay the bills. And then I was like, okay, this is not comfortable. I need more. But I was afraid to have that confidence to think that I had the capabilities to generate anything more than that. But I challenged myself. I was reading Think and Grow Rich at that time. And I was like, okay, well, what if I make the money that I set as my just getting by money as my weekly goal? And that became a weekly goal and fumbled a little bit in the beginning of that. But what that ended up doing is it started making me reevaluate what my time is worth. It made me really reevaluate where and what I should be offering and how I deliver to my clients. And then I got to the point where I'm like, well, what if my monthly goal became my daily goal? And every time I kept on moving that bar, my actions would follow. So I wanted to bring this slide up, and we're going to go into these numbers a little bit. This is where I want you to have your calculator. But I want to just plant that little mindset seed for you to know that wherever you choose to set as your point, like most likely when you believe into whatever that point is, your actions are going to live up to that. So I want you to be aiming at least for the $1 million. I would love for you to be able to do that, but I knew it took me some time to get comfortable with that idea. But know that it's possible. And, as we go through these numbers and talk a little bit about these numbers, I'm going to give you some tips about how these big, scary numbers might be a little bit more feasible for you if you need to break them down. But I also want to leave some room for you if you're somebody who might be starting out and you're like, I don't even have the clarity yet to know what my offers are. You can take any of these numbers. That's the beautiful thing about math, and modify these numbers as you need. At the time I was looking at this quadrant, I was like, okay, I don't do events. I don't have an instructional product. I didn't have a monthly subscription product at that time, but I could do the coaching part. I was like, okay, if I can get 20 people a month to pay me $1,050 a month for a year, then I have $250,000. Even that number, when I broke that down, that number seemed like that sounds kind of doable for me. But then I realized, do I really want to be coaching 20 people a month? Or can I maybe cut that number in half to 10 people and double the amount? So when you look at this chart, I want you to think about how you can play around with these numbers. But in order for this to work, you need to take a little bit of time to think about what your offers are. And we're going to talk a little bit about offers right now. There's the four numbers that I want you to think about. And again, like I mentioned, you can double these numbers, you can cut these numbers in half, you can triple these numbers. So if you were to offer something on a monthly subscription at $99 per month, and you got to the point where 212 people were paying that, in the course of a year, you'll have about $251,000. Now, if you decide you want to set your bar at 100,000, you could just simply cut some of these numbers in half if you like. Maybe you don't need 250,000 and you want to make 125. You can either say, okay, let me target 106 people, or maybe I'll do $200 for 100 people. You can kind of play around with these numbers and get the same result. But when you think about a monthly subscription, this is something, again, as I talked about, having systems in place. In order to have something that's a monthly subscription, you're going to want some automation that people can automatically put their card in once and be billed on a regular basis. You see this a lot when it comes to membership products. Right now in Bond to Bill, we have a number of different spaces where people are on a monthly membership, anywhere from $39 up to $259 a month. You can figure out what's going to work for you. So one of the business models is to think about something that you can offer, that you can automate. The thing that's been working well for many of us is just having a way to be able to group coach people, together into a space. And we use Bond to Bill for that. That's a monthly subscription. Some people will do things like you pay a monthly fee and you might get something mailed to your home every month. You see those box subscriptions that people do oftentimes. So one of the business models is something that you can do is like a monthly subscription. But you need to think about your industry, your products and services, and figure out, like, of the things that I offer, what's something that I might be able to set up in that way. A couple of things that I want to remind you about the monthly subscription is with the automation, you don't want to have to touch this stuff a whole lot. Like, you don't want to be investing a whole lot of time. You want it to be something that's kind of fulfilled. So when people are in that space or whatever it is that you set up as your infrastructure, that thing is just automatic that they can get to it. You don't want to have to manually be doing anything when you're doing that model. All right, one of my favorites, strategy number 2, is an instructional product. So an instructional product would be like a course or a course community. This one here, you have $299. You have 90 people enrolled in that thing every month. And in a year, you'll have $251,000. Okay. So an instructional product, let's just think about there's masterminds, there's group coaching spaces. Many of you, as I talked about, packaging your knowledge and making it available for people to get access to it. So like for me, for instructional product, I'm gonna give you a perfect example. I realized I was having the same conversations with people all the time. There were questions that people were asking me that I was always answering, but I was doing it in a way where I'm scheduling individual calls. Now my calendar's filling up because I have to keep on repeating myself and telling people the same thing. So the solution for me was to be able to create an instructional product where I could take everything that I know on a subject matter, put it into a space, gate it, as we call it, basically put a price point on it. And then when people enroll or pay, they get access to that information. That helped me a lot to be able to provide some support and some services to people who needed what I had to offer, had questions, needed that information, but may not have been at the point where they can afford to hire me at that higher price point as a personal coach. So an instructional product, that's going to be something that, to me, one of the best products is just taking information, what they call information product, packaging it in a way that people can self-serve and get access to it. Maybe you add a level of support on there and show up whatever scheduled time, so many oftentimes, just letting people know that you'll be there to help them through that information. But that's a good business model to follow, okay? The next one, strategy number 3, and this is the one of the models that Be Well does, and that's an annual and event product. So picture conferences, you see people doing retreats. This is something where you have not always large number of people, sometimes it can be, but that's again the power of being able to play with the numbers. If you had an event that you did where you had 500 people in that space, you charge $499 for every person, you generate $250,000 in that instant. So like somebody might want to just do one event and spend a whole year focused on promoting that event. Or somebody might want to take this product and do it every quarter. Or they might have all four of these strategies in place, and this is just one of the things that they do to make up that revenue. So there's a lot of different ways you can play around with this. You can not even have to do something in person. You can do online. There's tons of online conferences and webinars and that sort of thing now that people pay to get access to. So there's a number of ways to be able to play with that. Last but not least is option number 4, and this is where you have some type of coaching program or service. Now, these numbers, again, I'm at the point now, like when I used to look at that number of 1,050, I wouldn't dare do that now because I've learned the value of my time and I know how much time I pour into people that I work with. But at the time, that number was scary to me, that $1,050 to have personal one-on-one access to work with somebody individually. But I had to grow into that, my mindset, and had to become comfortable with that. So don't feel like, oh, I have to, find your starting pace is what I want to say, and that's going to shift as you become more comfortable with the way that you deliver your service, but also more clear on what it is that you do and the value that you provide for people. One thing that I can kind of describe that I've learned, I remember I would get the common thing from clients sometimes to be like, your prices are kind of low. But when I look back at those moments, that always spoke to me in hindsight about where my confidence was at that time. And that's just one of those things that you end up having to work through. I still sometimes get that comment today, but then I also get some people who've been with me for a while like, dang, you got expensive. And I'm cool with that. We can work with that. But all that comes with how clear you are about the value that you provide for other people. And then also your confidence level. So there's people who do $1 million for one coaching session for one client. There's people who are paid. So, earlier last week, Amani had posted something up. She said, what other people can afford is not your business. And, I used to be overly concerned about, is this affordable for the right people and all this? You have to really, when you start doing these numbers and you look at what it costs to run your business, you don't want to run into those cash flow issues. Like, these are the type of things that you have to take in consideration. Oftentimes, like I was just pricing stuff based on what I believed I could get for it, rather than really doing the actual work and the research to figure out what is it truly worth, and taking into consideration what value is it adding for somebody, because what it's worth is going to be different for different people. So I want you to take that kind of thing in mind. So I know this was supposed to be the 100K roadmap, but I gave you a 100K to 1 million roadmap that you can play around with these numbers with. For those of you who are here inside the Zoom and inside of Bond to Build, I will make this available for you afterwards. So now let's kind of talk a little bit about, like, okay, Mike, you tell me I need to be able to do all this stuff, make compelling content. I got to get my personal brand to be discoverable. I need to be able to have these different platforms and this infrastructure, but like how am I going to do all that? Again, I'm just one person. So I talked about packaging your knowledge and making it available for people to buy. For me, I think that, I talk about coaching and consulting. I talk about information products. I know because most of us have something that we're extremely good at, and we probably just don't see it as something that somebody else is willing to pay for. So I want you to kind of take inventory about your skill sets, think about the value that you provide for other people, think about your career. What have you learned in your jobs and your career that might be of value or something that could be packaged? We have a number of people here in the room. You have Amani, who has her National University, where she's teaching people and helping people through that journey of self-discovery. We have Dr. K here in the room, where she's helping people understand the value of maintaining their health and how to get the bag and keep the balance without going bananas and losing their balance and just falling out of space and can't do nothing. So she has information around that. I think about Carmen and her experience with retreats for the past, I was about to say decades. I'm probably not off, actually, when I think about it, since we've been working together for so long, who has her experience about creating retreat experiences and really making an impact on people. Like, all that stuff is information. There's things that you can add on top of that information to be able to add some extra additional value, but everybody has some area of expertise that can be packaged if you have the right team and support and knowledge about how to package that thing up. So I want you to be thinking about, what is it that I know? What is it that I can do? What value can I add to somebody else that might be something that I can share and make available as my offering? We talked about personal branding. So what that looks like having photos, having some kind of brand identity, some kind of way that you show up so that people, one, feel like your stuff is quality, two, feel like they can trust what you're saying and that you're making sense to them and you really understand where they're coming from. And the thing that also is unique is that like each of us have unique stories. I told a number of my own personal journey stories with you tonight. But all those things set me apart, and there are things that make me relatable to certain people and may not be relatable to others. But own those things because those things are part of your own journey and part of your personal story, and they really do add value to how people see you. I want you to always be mindful of that. Creating high value content is one of those things that I know many people struggle with. The high value content when it comes to the video podcasts, the YouTube channel, the reels, like there's so much stuff that's going out there, but I'm hoping that now that I've talked about what role these things play, that these are the things that you're putting out there so that people who find them and come across them can then come look to you to be able to help them and purchase your offers. I'm hoping you see these things as just one more thing to post. These things should have some impact and some value and make people think when they come across them. That's the reason that these things are important because they play a role in this whole foundation laying. And then last but not least, making scalable offers. We talked about being a solo business owner and that there's only so much that you can do. When I looked at that quadrant and I thought about like what's going to be best for me, what can I manage? I had to take in consideration how much support I had or how much I can handle. For me, doing things in a group format and having a higher volume of clients that I can coach in a group format and then limiting my individual one-on-one coaching clients worked well for me. Depending on how you're set up or depending on what your industry is, that might look a little bit different. Personally, now that I've kind of gotten to the point where I've reached that 100K revenue map, now I have more clarity to be able to see how I can take the things that I've learned and get up into this point and start aiming for that $1 million mark, which is my goal for this year. But all these things are going to be important for you to really be able to feel like these numbers are possible. If you don't have these things in place, like I mentioned, then it's going to be very difficult for you to be able to go beyond that. So let me just talk a little bit about, all those things that I talked about, how you can get the support and the help that you need. For those of you who are already members of Bond to Build, you have access to the first level, which is getting access to the space where we have a lot of different resources that you can use to be able to help you advance. Some of you are already members of the Be Well Platinum membership, and you're getting access 3 days a week to the coaching and the technical support. We're helping you build your personal brand. We're teaching you about how to create your content for your video podcasts and your website. You're already getting that level of support. If you're somebody who's watching this and you don't have access to Bond to Build, number one, get that because it costs you nothing to do. But if you're at that point where like I'm tired of being frustrated, I'm tired of struggling with trying to figure all this stuff out on my own, talk to the person who told you about tonight's webinar so that you can get access to the coaching and tech support group that we have. For those of you who are already inside of Bond to Build, we'll make sure we have a link here for you so that you can go to the next level if you want to get that tech support. And then for those of you watching on social media, we'll also have a link there for you as well. But really, I know that a lot of the stuff that I talked about can be high level, can be a bit overwhelming, and very difficult to do alone if you've not traveled this journey. You don't have the expertise or the support of other people to be able to help you. So there's a ton of stuff in the comments here. I want to kind of pause a little bit because I'm really curious about some of the people in the room, how you feel coming into tonight. A couple of things you can share with me. I would love to hear. One, share some kind of insights from some lessons learned on your road to your 100K or wherever you are currently in your revenue roadmap. But then the other thing that I would love to hear, if you're maybe someone who's not quite at that point yet, just let me know how this information that you heard tonight resonated with you. What's something that you're going to leave tonight's webinar or workshop ready to put into action afterwards? Feel free to unmute yourself and I'm going to watch here and see.
Yes. Okay. A couple of things. This was priceless. This is so valuable. I know where we're stuck. A lot of the majority of the people I serve is women entrepreneurs and women who are reinventing themselves in some capacity, from a corporate career to entrepreneurship, or from maybe being a stay-at-home mom to creating their own business. There's a variety. But what I believe is the thing that paralyzes us the most is the fact that we don't see ourselves as a subject matter expert. So that, because we are consuming so much content, but we're looking at where people have been building over an extended period of time. So I make a habit when I'm watching people that I admire, I go down the rabbit hole to find where they first started. So here's what I want to leave this conversation with, is making sure that we understand that if you are a subject matter expert and you know more than 10% of the people who you are called to serve, you are adding value. And where we start is not an indicator of where we're going to end up, but it's imperative that we start where we are and don't underestimate the power of growing your community and having your community to grow with you. It's exciting for Be Well to be celebrating our 10th year retreats with some of the people that started with us 10 years ago. And so if we didn't build that community, we welcome all the new people, but it's nothing like having those people in the room, in the space with me that actually started 10 years ago. So Mike, again, this is so valuable. I certainly appreciate you taking the time to share this knowledge with all of us.
Oh, my pleasure, Carmen. Thank you so much for sharing your feedback. And
that was amazing, Carmen.
Being part of that
was encouraging.
Kayla, you got some share? Anything that resonated with you tonight?
Well, I just popped on late because I had a Mary Kay party that I had to do, so I wasn't able to be involved in the whole thing. I don't know. I'm working on my content, and I'm not saying I'm having trouble. I'm just trying to find where it fits for me and how I fit into that. And then what you mentioned about what you charge is where your confidence level is. I think that resonated with me because I am one of those people who would think okay, does this fit their budget? Does this fit theirs? And so on and so forth. And can I charge this much money for someone to listen to me talk? Is that even okay? So there's a lot of questions that go back and forth in my head about stuff like that. I definitely know that part of it goes through my mind of what is it that I'm able to charge for my time, my service, and what I really have that valuable based off of the money aspect.
That makes sense. And thank you for just being vulnerable to share that. And, what I found is that really that perception evolves as you evolve. When I look back at myself and what my journey was like, I've had those same questions, had some of those same concerns. And as I evolved and got more clear about what it is that I do and the value that I offer to people, I was able to really see the difference that it makes. So, you're going through it as we all do. And the good thing is you're a Be Well Platinum member. So you have access to be able to come in and get that support whenever you need it to answer those questions and get that assistance. And I just want to commend you too, because in the space you've been showing up, I know that you sometimes feel oh, I'm behind, but no, you've been doing the work and it shows, and we love to be able to see people implement that. So thank you for being a good example of what it looks like to really use the program.
Well, thank you. You guys have been super helpful for me, giving me the direction that I need and feedback and encouragement and stuff like that. So, hey, it goes to you guys too, because you guys build this and I'm following along with your footsteps and you guys are successful. So I know that you'll be able to help me too. So it's been great. It's been really awesome. And Imani's been awesome too. So she's been so helpful.
Yeah, she left a note in the chat here. She said, nobody can do it like you do it. So never forget that. Never forget that. Thank you again for tuning in tonight. Look forward to seeing you next week. We'll have something going next week as well. And then make sure that you also tune in on Tuesday to Talk It Up Tuesday. We're going to carry this topic over to Talk It Up Tuesday and bring that on to that platform too. So see me there. You'll see me right here where you're watching, and also on YouTube. For those of you who are here inside the Zoom, I'll stay on a little bit longer if there's any questions you want to have after the live. The benefit of being a member, right? All right. Take care, everybody. Have a good one.